Welcome to Babies from Beyond, the podcast that gives all babies a voice, whether they are still in spirit or already earthside. I'm Lauren Dionysius, a former registered NICU nurse turned baby soul communicator, and I'm here to share the wisdom of today's babies to guide you on your motherhood journey. Today, I wanted to share a different perspective on the very sensitive and somewhat contentious topic in some circles of caesarean births. But I want to start with a bit of a disclaimer here, because in this episode, I am not advocating for a caesarean birth over a natural birth. I don't believe there is one right way to birth a baby into this world. But what I do advocate for is a guilt-free and also a shame-free birth. So I just wanted to say that before we get started. So let's dive in. I wanted to start by saying that so many women who come to me following a caesarean birth are consumed with guilt and shame about needing a caesarean birth or choosing to have a caesarean birth for whatever reason to bring their baby into the world. And there's many reasons for this, and I'm not going to go into all of the details here because it's really not the point of this episode. There's so many different reasons, and it's all on different levels too. Physical reasons, emotional, mental, social reasons, etc. for the mother and the baby. But it's so different for every individual woman and family that I'm not going to dive into that. But I want to emphasize that while natural birth has always been seen as the preferred option, and look, I completely understand this, and I also advocate this where appropriate and chosen on the soul level, I also know that it's not the reality for many women and their babies. And even as a nurse, this made me really curious. Why was this happening? If we were supposed to birth our babies naturally, why were there so many caesarean sections happening? And what also made me curious was the aftermath of a caesarean, the guilt that so many women feel about having a birth in this way, the shame, the feeling like a failure or that their bodies failed them in some way, as well as fear about future births and the grief around those unrealized or unrecognized dreams of the birth that they had desired. And over the years, it's really weighed heavily on my heart. It hurts my heart that women carry this burden, often for years on end, believing that they did something wrong or unnatural or that their bodies failed them in some way. So just a little more background here, for those of you who may not know, I worked for a few years very early on in my nursing career as a theatre scrub nurse in the operating room. So I worked in many different specialties, but one of these was obstetrics and gynecology, assisting with all different types of procedures within that specialty. But my favourite was assisting with caesarean sections, and often we would do one after the other. And I was in my very early 20s back then, and I didn't have any understanding around the spiritual or the energetic shifts that were going on at that time. But I still remember feeling that every single caesarean section was a miracle. Like literally over 3 years, my eyes would literally well up behind my mask and visor as I witnessed those first moments of these little wet and wriggly humans beginning their life in this way. And to me, it was just so magical. So my view of birth was very much shaped by these early years. I didn't see a natural birth until probably a couple of years into my nursing career. So elective and emergency cesareans were the beginning for me, literally. And I'm going to speak mostly in this episode around elective cesarean sections, so that are pre-planned or pre-booked, again, for whatever reason. Emergency cesareans are a little bit different, and because of this, I'm actually going to share more in the next episode, which is going to come out as a bonus episode at the same time. So if you're listening to this one now, know that that episode is already out. So I saw cesareans as a very common and often necessary way of birthing. And I didn't have strong feelings about whether they were right or wrong. It's just that they happened. That was the reality. But during my years then, later in my career of communicating with babies on the soul level, I began to see things differently in ways that didn't really line up with what these women were saying about how it was wrong, or I made the wrong choice, or it shouldn't have happened this way, or my body's failed me, or, there's this sense of cesarean sections often being labeled as wrong or some kind of inferior way of birthing. But over all of these years, I've never once had a baby say, please put me back in there because I was supposed to come out of her vagina. Like, it's hand on heart, it's never happened. Not once, never. Because babies, well, in my experience anyway, which is all I can speak to, have never ever said to me that their birth was wrong. Surprising? Absolutely. Sometimes they can hit the ground a little bit shell-shocked, but they've never said that was wrong or I started my life in the wrong way. Like, that has literally never happened after hundreds, even thousands of babies. So that leads me then into sharing with you the most common reason that babies choose to come into the world via cesarean. And I really want to emphasize that because it's a choice. Just consider for a moment that a baby could prefer to have a cesarean section over a natural birth for different reasons. And the most common reason is that it's for the highest timeline for all involved. And the highest timeline is the one that offers the most opportunity for growth. And this is the type of growth that's in alignment with life purpose, reasons for coming, what they're here to learn and grow through, all of these things. And also some babies, especially those that have been to Earth many times, they're looking for new and different ways to experience being a human. And if a baby hasn't been to the Earth via a cesarean section before, they often want to come in this way because it's a new experience for them and they get to have a different beginning to their journey here on Earth that they may not have had before. If you want to understand a little more around timing and timelines, then I did do an episode on this, episode 9, so you can head back and check that out if you want to understand more about this higher timeline that I'm talking about. I remember one of the most profound answers that a baby ever gave me when I asked her about why she came as an elective cesarean section. I actually wrote it down in one of my many journals that I've collected over the years, as well as Word docs about baby conversations that I've had because there wasn't really anybody I could talk to about this for a while. But here's what she said in a very direct and very matter-of-fact way. And I'll put this in quote marks because this is how it came through. I chose to come by cesarean because I was able to bypass the energy my mother was holding in her birth canal, her emotions, her trauma, and her past relationships. That energy is her journey in this life, but that energy was not part of my journey. So when this came through to me, when I heard this, it was really surprising to me because I'd never ever considered that before. But it also actually made a lot of sense, because for the first 15 years of my nursing career, that had never ever occurred to me. But since then, it's certainly helped me to understand babies and their world better. And by the way, I'm not saying this is necessarily why your baby or your own soul chose to have a cesarean section. As I mentioned, there's many reasons. But what really inspired me to share today's episode was to introduce you to the idea that your baby chose this, and that perhaps it was just the platform that they needed to begin their journey earthside in this life. So I want to speak more to this though, because how we begin our life, how we take our first breath, how we literally land here on the earth and cross that threshold from spirit to earth has a big impact on us, not just in those early seconds, minutes, days, weeks, months, but also for many years to come. I really want to talk a little more into this, because as women, we do hold so much energy in our womb space and in our birth canal. Not only our own, but our mothers, our grandmothers, and the ancestral lineages that we carry with us in our DNA. As women, our womb and our reproductive space is where we hold that. And that's why it's so powerful, I feel, at the moment, that there's such an awareness around womb healing and energy work and all of these things that can start to help clear the stuff that we hold in our womb. And we have our own journeys, we all do. And so do babies. And what I really learned from this baby is a cesarean section really allows them to bypass or to not pick up all of your energy that you're carrying on the way through birth. And I don't say this in judgment, I say this with compassion. We all hold energy in our womb space. Helpful, not helpful, old stuff, trauma stuff, all of these things. So it's not a judgment. It's not something to, I don't want you to use this as a stick to beat yourself up with or another thing that you need to deal with, but just to have this awareness that when we see cesareans in this way, it's a really beautiful way. Like, how amazing that you can allow or you can offer this way for your baby to not pick up your stuff, to bypass that, while allowing you to journey with your energy that you came here to journey with, but also to break that pattern and them not need to journey with that also. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I just think it's such a really beautiful way to support these babies and offer these babies a different way from the get-go, like a clean slate in that respect. I don't believe any baby has a clean slate. We're all souls that arrive with our own baggage attached in some way. But yeah, I really hope that can offer you a different perspective. And as I said, there are many reasons for cesareans. It can be around the timing, it can be around the physicality, it can be around the physical body. There can be medical reasons, as I mentioned at the beginning. There can be all sorts of reasons, but leaning into the energetics behind it and that bigger soul picture, I think is a really beautiful thing. And a different perspective that you may not have considered before. I understand, though, that this episode may have stirred something in you, maybe leaving you with more questions than answers, and that's totally okay. You know, the soul journey, it's not neat or linear, and sometimes the questions you have are what allows you to dive in deep, well below the surface. So If something resonated, or if you have a question that you'd like me to explore in a future episode, whether it's around Caesarean sections or a totally different topic, I'd be so grateful if you left a review and added your thoughts or your questions there. I read every single one, and they help me to know what's landing for you and where you'd like me to go next with this. Every single episode I do is based on a real question that women just like you have asked me over the years, and I know that there's many more to come. I'm very passionate about co-creating this podcast with you, using your voice, your heart, your curiosity, because they all matter here. Thank you for tuning in to Babies from Beyond. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to leave me a review just wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, head over to Instagram and give me a follow at Born Energy, and check out the show notes for more ways that you can connect with your baby's soul, including one-on-one readings and online programs to support you. Until next time, trust your journey and your baby. Take care.